Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the MSP Cyber Roundtable. I've got with me today two friends from Hook Security, Nick Wolf, and the founder, Zach Eikenberry. Nick's been on the show before, so I won't pick on you too much, Nick, but just starting out, how's your day? Like, are you looking outside thinking, like, I'm thinking, like, okay, I got to get to the store. I've already got the charcoal. I'm, like, ready to get all the things and start my weekend. What's it looking like for you?
It's Lobster Fest tonight at the local firehouse, so I'll be going to the local firehouse with my dad and getting some lobster dinner.
Are you on the volunteer line, or you're just like enjoying it?
I'm the enjoyer. I'm here's my money and let's have a good night. Yes.
Yeah. So so when I was a little bit younger, I thought it was dumb because the food was never great at the firehouse. But as I've grown more wise, it's really great building community locally, right? And these first responders work really hard for in my area, no pay at all, and that stuff's important.
Whatever I could do to not have to cook myself, I will do. So I am a big fan of Boy Scout pasta dinners and the Knights of Columbus pancake breakfast, and the Lobster Fest that the fire department does is always my favorite.
All right. Well, enjoy. Zach, so what do you have planned here? Do you got a dinner plan?
Yeah. My 10-year-old met a reading challenge this week, so I owe her a steak dinner. So I'll be grilling out steaks tonight.
Okay.
I am also an ICP for local community events. So people plan stuff around me to show up and pay them more money than I should.
That's great.
But that's not happening for me tonight.
Good for the local community. What was the reading goal?
They just have this challenge at school where certain books are worth certain points, and then they have to get so many points in a summer. And she's been out of school for 4 days and decided to meet her entire summer reading challenge.
Oh, someone needs to rethink or recalibrate that challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I offered her $100 in a steak dinner if she did it in her first week, and she did it in 4 days. That's right.
No. I wish my sales quota was that easy to hit.
I wish anything was that easy to achieve for me.
My world is around aligning incentives. That's part of my job.
It's good. All right, so since this is your first time on the show, I'm going to tell you one of the most popular questions we get from the channel for our guests. So I'm going to ask you, since it's your first time on, how did you end up in charge of a company whose job is to dig in to the psychology of people doing stuff that's maybe not so smart for cybersecurity, right? And getting them to improve that. And so I want to tell the Hook story, but this question's actually not about Hook and about anything that happened after that idea happened and the Hook founding. It's really, how did you become the person that was in a place to do that, right? People don't usually start out in security. They land in security later. So I guess that trajectory would be interesting. And if you have any war stories on the way, would be also interesting.
Yeah, well, I don't know how interesting it is or not, but before Hook, I actually started 2 high schools and a middle school in South Carolina. And I come out. Yeah, so and those were schools focused on entrepreneurism. And as we used to say there, you'll never be unemployed if you can hire yourself. And so grew those schools up, retired from there. I started those schools when I was like 27. I was just a young punk kid who didn't know he couldn't. No one told me I couldn't anyway. And
they weren't like, "Where's your administrator credential?"
No. As a matter of fact, it was. I mean, part of I think the interest in our school was the fact that it was non-traditional, and it was for folks that struggled within the standard factory model of education, and so. and when you do that, and you have to, I don't know. I do have some undergrad exposure to psychology, but I spent a lot of time in the psychological sciences and developmental research around young people. And so when Hook, before Hook even started taking place, like you said, there was this conversation in training around like, what are we doing when it comes to training in the workforce, corporate training, managed service providers providing like, why are we just taking all the bad ideas we know that don't work in public education, and why are we throwing them over here in corporate education?
Well,
Yeah.
it's at least in public education, you have a mixture of good and bad. You're right. That's a lot of what we see in the corporate education market is like the worst models, right? It's not even like the worst mixed with the best.
That's exactly right. Like you don't even have the luxury of like treating humans as humans. They often just talk about humans as like layers of defense or firewalls or avatars of risk. Like they don't actually talk about humans as humans. And I think bringing the psychological sciences forward is something that we champion. It is not where the industry is today. The industry focuses on behavioral economic models of human behavior. And so we are trying to get past like what people do and just measuring what people do in your organization to why do people do that. And so we're asking ourselves why people do anything in your organization, and that's where we built Hook on. So
I love the entrance to security coming from the educator angle, because I've been around the block a few times, and I know people that run training companies and not too many educators among them, actually. So that's really
I've yet to
interesting.
meet any. Yeah, if you find somebody,
I've met a couple. But it's not the predominant mode of the industry.
Yeah,
And that makes sense. That there's something unique there to point to. Now, I actually happen to be a little bit of an amateur student of behavioral econ, so I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to say that there's a lot of training out there that doesn't even do that. Okay.
sure.
But why don't you contrast your thinking there on when you're teaching someone how to be what would be a positive way for them to interact, right? What are their responsibilities? How do they engage positively with their work culture in this to solve this problem, right? Why is behavioral econ not enough? Like, what is that missing element? Talk about that human element there.
Oh, okay. Well, I can talk about what's missing, but the standard program today is you create a series of incentives and punishments for your employees when it comes to training and awareness, clicking on phishing emails, etc. And you simply say like, listen, if you click on 3 phishing simulations in a year, you can be terminated. If you do not, your reward is keeping your job. Or there's other people that are more nice about it, and they'll say like, do other types of company-wide incentives or showcase people or promote champions. But by and large, that's as far as people go. And then they say, and so usually security training groups are trying to turn up the knob on how to measure people more. How do I measure these behaviors? What am I measuring? How do I get more data? Because the idea is that if I have more data, then I can influence what is supposed to be just a human who is in full control of their decisions of whether or not they're introducing risk or de-risking the company at any given time. And if I have more data, then I can manipulate those humans into doing the best behaviors on behalf of the company.
It's an interesting observation you have. Well, first of all, let me say, behavioral econ is a real science. What you're describing there is the worst part of it. Okay, it is the lowest common denominator stuff. You're right. That's out there right now in a lot of cyber awareness training. Nick, I wonder if you have anything to say here about, because you spent a little bit of time peripheral to the insurance industry.
Yep.
Collecting massive amounts of data, ... problem solved. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like in my predecessor, Cork, which was a cyber warranty, cyber insurance carrier, most of the payouts weren't necessarily linked to the software failing. I installed this EDR, it didn't do a good enough job, so something bad happened to the machine. It was really linked around the users doing things that they shouldn't have done. They sent that wire transfer fraud to that bank account without double verifying and calling the person directly. They just fell victim to their inbox at the end of the day.
Yeah, and even if you collect all those stats, it's like, okay, you've got the stats, now what, right? It reminds me of the left sock gnome from South Park.
Right.
But in any case,
Zach, I want to talk about steel pants, something
question mark profit.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Before we get into Hook, though, let's talk about some of these specific behaviors. So I know that you've actually got some examples we're going to talk about here today.
Yep,
so
top 5.
Nick, you want to? Do you have the first one ready?
Yeah, let me pull up this slide here. So the first, behavior we're going to talk about is urgency, and this is actually an attack that happened to us here at Hook. Right? It reached out. A threat actor reached out to us saying, "Hey, cancel my account." And I received a $200 bill. Cancel my account. Didn't ask for a refund on the very first email chain, but they at least wanted to try to bait us with this type of urgency. So Zach, you have a lot more experience here. You've probably seen hundreds of these emails come through, but this kind of it hit the team relatively recently. It was real time. So what's the thought process behind here? How do the threat actors, utilize this, around small businesses in the United States?
Yeah, I think the psychology that's at play here really grounds a lot of these behaviors we're going to talk about over the 5 examples we brought. But the number one thing that employees really want to do is they want to show up and show that they're valuable, right? And most people that work for a company are excited to show up and show value and to be part of a team and to improve the company over time, whatever that is. Operations, sales, whatever. If you're on a company team, you're usually there with good intentions to do a great job. And when you get something like this back sent to you and it's urgent, you say, oh no, I must have dropped the ball on something. How can I make this right away? They send me something with urgency and I'm nervous that I slowed down and I missed something. So I want to respond in similar fashion. And so what it is it's disarming in the sense that it's how quickly can I solve this for them? Because again, we want to be a good company for the world. We want good people to work with us. There's usually some level of benevolence here on the employee side that receives this email that says, oh, I can fix that. I want to do that and I want to do it fast. And so that's what the psychology that's at play here, and then you start going, your spidey senses start to peak up and you're like, wait a second, we don't offer $200 subscriptions.
It's interesting, Zach, because the urgency driver for personal cyber fraud attacks, right? And corporate cyber fraud attacks, it plays out differently, right? Because people's the way they I guess it's the perception of who they are and what their responsibilities are is different, right? So there's business owners out there that are in position to gain something really quickly, right? But most CEOs are not gonna fall victim to do this now and you get $1,000 or something like that, right? But the urgency driver gets used in both places, right? And I've seen with grandma scams, right? You have the urgency driver, right? And it's I literally feel the need to save someone's life here, right? But you're talking about actually something that points to someone's personal worth. I want to be a good human. Here's a customer that's angry at my brand. I don't want them to be angry at my brand. I want them to feel like I've helped them and the company is valuable. And how do I, it's really interesting how that contrasts because you can use urgency in different ways there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And urgency in this case is a reciprocity. It is if they show up urgent, I want to urgently resolve it. Right. Because
Yeah.
all of a sudden we're both on the same clock and I can tell that you value fast movement and I want to show you that I can move fast. Therefore you
Yeah.
value me. And that's the interesting thing here.
And I do a lot of training with MSPs on how to respond to actual real incidents, real anomalies. And the first thing you train them to remember at the beginning of every incident is slow down.
That's right.
Right? So they can think, right?
That's right.
Because it's easier to cause damage with mistakes than it is to take too long. And, but the human, right, in them, who's tasked with being the responder, right, can sometimes, whether you're at an MSP or you're in an enterprise, right, something's wrong. I need to fix it right now. Like you see a small fire burning, you want to put it out because it's fire, right? But small fire can turn into a big fire if you throw grease on it, right?
That's right. It takes a lot to overcome your biology because your body can't tell the difference between a real and perceived threat. And like, if this is a perceived threat, your body they measure help desk support people and they have constant hits of adrenaline and cortisol throughout the day. And because their body is physically reacting to support tickets that come in and incidences that come in, and they're constantly trying to resolve those in a very fast manner because cortisol and adrenaline actually try to speed up the resolution to something. And to stop and take a breath is a very powerful tool in all cases. Yeah.
So typically what I would say is slow down. When you're feeling that something's urgent, right? Recognize that, right? Consciously, right? And then set it to the side so you can think. Is that an effective training guide? I mean, it's hard to overcome your biology, like you said.
Do you want to know some of the things I've read? Here's a trick that I train folks to do. Say out loud to yourself, it's okay and it'll be okay. Say it out. You have to hear it verbally. You have to you go, okay, this will be okay. I'm okay. All right. And then what it does is immediately puts you into perspective mode. And then you can evaluate these things objectively because this email is trying to get you to be non-objective and to make mistakes. Right. So if I go take a deep breath and I go, it's okay. This will all be okay. Close my eyes, look somewhere else, look back at the screen. And I go, all right, what's going on?
Now,
all right, well, yeah, go ahead.
Zach, in this particular example that we have on the screen, obviously we don't have a $200, invoice that gets sent out, and this isn't even a customer of ours. So, we didn't reply to this email saying, hey, we can't find your account information, send this more. We didn't even touch it because by replying to this email, now the bad guys have our signature, right? And that signature might include my cell number, my personal line, right? That they could further extract information from us in a bad way. So would you say if an organization gets in a type of attack like this, do they reply? Do they delete it? What do they do?
Well, some of it is policy dependent upon the type of organization, but in general, you should let the security team know. And if you're the security team, you should resolve, but there should be blockages put on those sending accounts, and those should be notified, and it should train your system to be more mature in the next cycle, and you should get rid of it. But the replying to it is in part a failure because it's these emails are designed to verify information on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to point out here, there's two really clear spelling mistakes here. The $sign at the end, which, by the way, in parts of the world, that is how they write currency. And it looks like capitalization there on please. But I want to note here, these tells are going away. Because what I've seen most recently is a wave of attacks that the tell is that it's an inhumanly good communication.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the AI is over optimized. This one in particular might be interesting as a trivia fact. So when startups die and they publicly announce that they're dying. Like, they were funded by VCs and they sparked and then they die or something along those lines. There's a public press release. Their domains and derivative domains are usually no longer protected. And what this attack was using a legitimate domain and using the name of the founder of that company. So it was legitimate top to bottom, but it's a defunct company that had an announcement when you look into it. So just beware that, they are able to go in now and say there was once a reputable domain and a reputable company that no longer exists, and now they've grabbed the domain and derivatives of it. And they use that actually to log in. So I did go look this guy up on LinkedIn, and his LinkedIn account had also been compromised. And so it was a pretty sophisticated. So somebody out there is probably falling for this person right now.
Well, I think that leads us into our next behavior as well. Falling victim to someone saying that they are when they really aren't, right?
Pull it up.
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull that up. So the next behavioral we want to talk about is verification over trust. A couple years ago, the MGM casinos suffered a big compromise. And again, it wasn't necessarily their software that was failing, right? It wasn't, I installed this EDR tool, but the bad guys got through. This was a failure on the user level. So Zach, do you want to explain a little bit more in the weeds, what happened with this attack and how we could protect ourselves in the future?
Yeah, this attack was multi-stage, but the way to summarize it is they used the help desk helpfulness against themselves. And basically they kept bombarding this help desk with multi-factor authentication and requests for entry from a compromised credential. And eventually the help desk said, you know what? Sorry, we don't want to get in the way. Yes, I'll authenticate you. Here you go. And then once they were in, they were in. And psychologically, right, the moment that help desk person did it, they were like, oh, thank God I finally helped this person, right? And they probably took a break afterwards to pat themselves on the back for helping somebody get in and do their job because they wanted to be a great colleague. They modified the policy just a little bit, but they used their discretion to do it, right? That's what failed.
And this one was part of a large campaign.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a help desk ticket, right?
It was multi-stage. Yeah. I was pointing to where it broke. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but there was multiple identities that they were chasing at multiple companies, and multiple is maybe an understatement, right? It was a very large campaign. And so as a defender, you had to not just get it right that once. You had to get it right like all the time, which is real, that's cultural learning. That's not even like you have to win over an individual, right? You have to make the whole culture resistant to that type of thing. It's challenging. It's challenging. And MGM did everything right, still got it wrong, right? And I am sort of curious what came out of that, like lessons learned at the end of the day, and how they changed the way they train those frontline people. But Caesars got hit right across the street, and they responded very differently.
That's right. I do think that. So some of these attacks, even though they're using psychology against the people, they're trying to get help desk people to be helpful. They're trying to get solutions engineers to provide solutions. They're trying to use the psychology against. Like you said, they're not just coming at it from one angle. And some of these brands may not impact MSPs or small businesses directly because the amount of AI and token usage to do this costs more for the attacker than it does for the defender to use them right now. And so because the defender knows their call it their surface or their exposure level, and the attacker does not. And so what you do have a bit of asymmetry game going on right now. That won't always be the case, but these psychological tricks are part and parcel to this game. And there's even a probably more predominant one, the multi-factor in the Uber attack that use Slack. So somebody got inside of Slack at Uber and then was able to proliferate and find a colleague that finally was going to be helpful to them. You know, they were even sending Slack messages like, hey, such and such isn't being helpful. Will you be the helpful one to me? Even though what they were doing was saying, this person over here is holding up policy and won't give me access. Will you make the exception for me? Are you cool? Are you one of the cool ones?
Yeah.
And that's what they were doing inside of Slack. Again, a psychological trick more than anything else.
Which actually ties into our next point here as well, to keep the conversation going, of mindful sharing and optimism bias. You know, optimism bias, that's another word for, you know, it won't happen to me, right? You know, it can't happen to me. You know, the attackers want to, you know, attack someone else, someone with more money or more lucrative. You know, it won't happen to me. And this is actually a real story that happened to me. Nick Wolf, right? So I was in the period of a transitioning jobs, but it was private. It wasn't publicly announced. I wasn't announcing on LinkedIn that, hey, I need a new job, I'm open for work. This was a very private search that I was having conversations with when I was leaving my last job and shortly before I joined the good people at Hook. And I got an extremely targeted, sophisticated email in my own personal inbox saying, hey, Nick, hope you're doing well. We know that you've done success with the partner acquisitions role in the past, especially at Datto and Cork and Evo and some of my other providers. We're looking for this type of role in this price range. Would you be interested in chatting? So they talked. Number one, they found my personal email address. Number two, they knew that I was on the market, or at least having conversations about being on the market. They listed my immediate history as well as, you know, my OTE range, which is the normal amount for my conversations that I've been having. Now, obviously, what I did was, before I did mindful sharing and just said, yeah, let's have a conversation. Here's my resume, and gave them more information. I took a quick pause, and I was able to find out in this particular attack, it was, you know, monica.bankofamerica@gmail.com, which we all know that the CEO of Bank of America isn't going to be hitting us up using a Gmail address. But, you know, going back to optimism bias, you know, it could really happen to everybody. I've been in the cybersecurity field for 15 years now. And, you know, this attack, you know, just hit home because it was such a narrow focused, right? If I just got promoted at my last job and I was employee of the year and this type of attack hit me, you know, I would be able to know that it was clearly a fake attack. But because it got me in such a narrow window where I was going from one job to potentially joining another job, it really, somebody did their homework here. They were able to find out, maybe it was because other colleagues were leaving my previous job and they noticed that that was the trend. But this is something that I you know, really sparked my interest.
So this one's sophisticated, Nick, and I have some idea of what they were trying to do here, but I want to point out that this is a very sophisticated group doing this. That may have been out of North Korea or may not have. But the typical play here is to either A, get you to install something, right? And which you might be like, well, I'm too smart for that, right? Until you're like, you're talking to this person who's already done one interview round with you, and they're like, okay, well, we'd like to like have you interview with this other panel, but this is a very sensitive position, and we need to have we actually have a program we need on your computer, and the purpose of it is to make sure that you're a real person. And, you know,
wow, they take security very seriously. That makes me feel even more secure. I'm obviously going to install that.
No, I've seen that one. And if they fail, even if you don't install the thing, right, they still learn enough about you to then steal your identity and run with it.
Yep. Because as part of the interview process, I probably have to upload my driver's license, right? Or something like that.
Or they just get your face really moving there, right? And it's pretty sophisticated. So I hope you escaped this one unscathed. I have seen people fall down this hole before, and it's dangerous because of how sophisticated it is, right? But you know, it used to be that it's unusual to get hit with a sophisticated attack, right? But the cybercrime industry is so big, right? That these really, and I know I heard you say, well, you're with the token economics, right? You're not going to see this in your MSP clients, right? And I think that while like the shotgun approach of like spraying the whole world, that's true. Attackers are increasingly being careful about who they attack, right? So they come with really nuanced campaigns, right? And it's not that you're a high value target, it's that you as a target match their campaign like
that's right.
Definition.
I just don't think you're going to see brute force multi-stage attacks on entire like for the
yeah. But you will see these types of things, right?
Yeah, this is whether or not they are a platform like a nation state that does all stages of the project, or whether this is a data broker trying to validate a, frankly, a high income earner, right? And to get them into cycle, like that's what they're trying. One of those two things is true, right? They're either a point solution trying to do the data broker, or they're a platform here. But that's what I think. And like the psychology of it, that they're playing off with Nick is like, oh yeah, like they know me, they must do their research. Like there is a level of validation that they're bringing to the table that's very disarming. And I think the research out there also shows that regardless of how much security training you've had, the right type of email in the right context at the right time will get through to you. Not your email security filter. It'll get past that easy. I mean, your spidey senses will drop, and you'll say.
So speaking of spidey senses, that kind of leads us into our next point here around strong authentication habits, right? I have a suit of armor. I'm in a castle. I have the drawbridge up. Does that mean I can let my guard down because I'm wearing this armor because I'm in the castle? Like the bad guys, aren't going to attack me, right? I'm in the castle. I'm wearing the armor, right? What's the psychology behind that mindset there, Zach?
Yeah, I think it's the false sense of protection, right? There's an interesting study on executives who know what they spend on cybersecurity and how relaxed they become when they're like, hey, I'm spending X amount of dollars on my email security tools, and I'm spending all this other over here on my antivirus or whatever it is, and backups and all this. And so when I get into my inbox, it better be clean, right? And they just let down their guard, and they assume like, I spend too much on this, we work too much on this for me to. So there's an irony in that when you signal to the bad guys out there that you have a really resilient surface, that means that you're probably worth attacking. And so, it's the old idea of like, why rob?
I see this. I have to fight this one every week in my partner base, right? Because there's many different versions of this, but it's very similar to what you study in psychology that's labeled moral licensing, right? I'm a really good guy over here, therefore it's okay if I'm a little bad over here, right? I had this like fruit smoothie for breakfast, right? So now I can have that extra snack later, or like sneak a cigarette or something like that. Like I had like the good breakfast, right? You're right. This plays up in people's cyber posturing, and I'm fighting it every day. Where people look at, hey, I'm doing XYZ, it's really amazing. I added this maze over here in the corner. Isn't it beautiful? Like this security maze I put over here, right? And therefore, it's not just letting guard down. That's part of it. It's also like a little bit of willful blindness, or like this focus over here, right? And not not even like checking yourself about what you don't know or haven't looked at lately, right? Over there. And I think that all plays in here. And I could see many different versions of this that aren't just about like, oh, I have like the multi-factor whatever, right? there's like, as you said, Nick, like it's like insert tool, right? As an excuse.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that the psychology of like a compliance framework, passing an audit, you're like, okay, we're good now. And getting some of that security mixed up with compliance, and not understanding the role of each, can really, that's just something as a psychological trick, and this impacts behaviors, is just to be aware that like when you put up a flag that you're a resilient company, you're signaling to the people out there that you have something worth taking. And so, and you become a trophy on the shelf for someone. So some of the largest brands that have been compromised, and even small businesses and banks that have been compromised in the last few cycles, have some of the most publicly available like information on their resilience and how secure they are for their clients, etc.
Meanwhile, the bad guys are like, hold my beer, I got this.
That's exactly right. And so you should vigilance and awareness, I don't usually use the term awareness, but vigilance definitely should increase as your posture increases. It should not, like you said, have this trade-off effect that happens psychologically. That they should avoid that and push back against that instinct at all costs.
So I've seen another version of this where sometimes it's super clear, but sometimes it's just like a coloring of the security program, where inside an organization, right, you've got CEOs up here, and the C-level positions are at the top, and then you have everyone else at the bottom, and you trust the CEO a lot, right? Because they're basically embodying the company's will, and the people down at the bottom, like, maybe you don't trust them as much. And what I will sometimes see in the security rules is less security around your business principles because they're trustworthy people, right? And more security on the people that frankly don't have a lot of impact in the organization.
That's right. Or is that a fancy way of saying the security team exempts themselves from the security practices?
I've seen that, but I've also seen the security team off to the side build a castle that way for the rest of the org, where the directors and the C levels like don't have to do X, they don't have to do Y, they don't have to do Z, right?
No, everybody needs to be held accountable. Everybody needs training, and to back it all up, everybody needs to be reported on their training, whether they have done it, not done it, clicked it. So that actually brings us to our fifth and final point here, the shame. So Zach, I click on something that I shouldn't have clicked on. What happens?
Right. Yeah. So this is the psychological. So shame is a very interesting response, because shame is failing. It's the feeling of failing or coming up short in a permanent way again with your colleagues or other people. Like, other people think less of you, and there's not much you can do about it. And what happens if people find out X about me? So this response psychologically is used in a lot of ways. There is, like, yes, they click or they do something, and immediately an extortion scam could take place. That's very possible. Like, hey, we saw that you clicked on something you shouldn't have. There's also just like moralistic extortion that happens all the time, which is like, I don't have to actually know that you use the internet to its full extent to claim that you did. And then I can make a claim that, hey, I've seen what websites you're on. Hey, I've seen what you're into. And therefore, I think you should do X to resolve it. The reverse of that I've seen recently is the next level. This gets to like meta psychology, which is impersonating the security team or somebody on your team that says like, hey, I think you used your work device for something inappropriately. Don't worry. Give me access. I'll remove it and everything will be cool again. And you go, oh, did I? Did I not? I don't know. Maybe I did. Here, have access. Here, have information about our company. Here, have what you need so that I don't feel shame.
And that thing you just mentioned is really really tough to fight because a lot of employees, and more so now than a few years in the past, they don't really feel the need sometimes to protect their employer, right? If they have to choose between protecting themselves and protecting their employer, right? If you could do both, great, right? But if you have to choose, right? People are like, they don't care to protect their employer. They're like, IT's got it, like,
That's
right?
right. Yeah. There is some of that, and that's because they don't want to even. Yeah, that probably falls a little bit into the previous point. I think the shame response is just this idea of like using people's shame against them.
Yeah.
Like, what if people find out something about me I don't want them to find out about me? What am I willing to do to protect that? And using that shame response, there's just ways that I can either extort you, or I could pretend that I'm your hero and I'm going to fix that for you so you don't have to feel shame. But either way, the psychology of shame is probably one of the most profound. There are some authors out there who think this shame response is the shame honor response is actually the grounding of our social cognition, and like how we think about who we are is grounded in my belief in your perception of me.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about it from that root perspective, right? This could also probably play out in terms of people attacking someone's credibility.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna, gonna let people know you skipped on your diet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily a threat. You can use this tool against people in ways that are not a threat, right? If it's going to create more credibility with your peers to do X and less credibility to do Y, right?
You're particularly vulnerable, like you were mentioning, though, in an organization that has like low trust. Like, so I don't trust my colleagues to give me the benefit of the doubt on something. So what if somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I have this information about you, and I'm going to share it with your colleagues. I'm going to share it with your family." And you're like, "Oh no, like I don't trust." They'll probably believe you, and they won't believe me. And like that is a really hard dynamic. And these kind of psychological tricks can expose poor company culture, and the company cultures that have low trust and they have a high amount of wrongly placed conflict and a few other things. I think you're going to see cybercrime just all over those companies.
Well said.
Well, I want to take a moment to talk Hook. We didn't bring it onto the stage today, but I had the opportunity to look at some of your materials, and it was really fun because I see a lot of bad training and training that's boring or totally the one that bothers me is not the boring one, because I'm like in this position of assessing organizations, like how good is your education? Boring's okay if people learn from it, although it's hard to get people to learn from it. It's when the content's totally irrelevant or like just wrong for what an organization needs. So I looked at some of your materials and I saw all the things I wanted to see. But I think, Nick, do you want to tell us how, if people want to learn more about you guys, like what do they need to know?
Yeah, if a managed service provider is interested in learning more, they could scan this QR code or reach out to us on our website. That's my email and contact information there as well. In short, the elevator pitch is Hook. We're a security awareness training and phishing simulation for managed service providers and their small to medium-sized business customers. All of our training content is live action with US-based actors. We're one of the only providers left that actually has their own production facility and production team. So all of our content is, again, live, real people. It's not AI voiceovers. It's not slideshows. It's not animated cartoons. It's live, real people, available in long form format. So an hour training once a year, or even shorter micro learnings, which is just a quick 2 to 3 minute video that you can watch on a monthly basis, all of which will be fully managed by the Hook team. So our team sends out the training, sends out the phishing simulation, so you as an MSP can take a step back. It's one less thing that you have to worry about. let Hook do all the heavy lifting. So yeah, we have hundreds of MSPs utilizing us today, and we're trying to turn that into thousands of MSPs. That's why I'm here.
Well, thanks, guys.